Welcome back, everyone. I'm Meredith Link.
And I'm Haley Fonsteel. Today, our topic is meal planning and shopping tips. This lesson is supposed to make grocery shopping and meal plan easier for you and your family. So first, we'll talk about the nutritional gatekeeper. You may have never heard of something like this before, but this person is who determines about 72% of what the family eats. So this person also has a little bit of an impact on what the family eats outside of the home by packing lunches and giving money to purchase food at a restaurant or purchase food at maybe a convenience store or concession stand. So they have somewhat of an impact on what they eat outside of the home, but also a strong impact on what is provided in the home. So like I said, it's about 72% of what the family eats. So it's a very important role. So in terms of nutritional gatekeepers, we have low, moderate, and high confidence. So those with low confidence are more likely to have certain barriers when it comes to meal planning. Maybe it's a time barrier. Maybe it's just not understanding or not knowing what to provide the family. With high confidence, there more consistent, balanced meals. So with this lesson, our goal is that we are moving toward high confidence gatekeepers in all of you. So as far as nutrition essentials, we are trying to focus mainly on whole foods. So aiming to provide a variety of each food groups, like what we've talked about, and then aiming to serve at least 3 food groups at each meal. And we'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a little while. So with the power plate, this is what we use as our power plate. You might have seen something similar to this before, but this is basically a guideline on how to set up the plate that encourages, in a way that encourages balance and variety. So now, something to keep in mind is your kid's plate will rarely look balanced, but for the parents, this is a good handout to show you what to serve. So if you can see up here, the protein, so we always want to have some sort of protein food served. So first we choose a protein, next we choose a whole grain or starchy vegetable. So that's going to be the top left part of the plate. So starchy vegetables would be like sweet potatoes, peas, corn, and beans. So those would go in that section up there. And then filling in half of the plate with those non-starchy vegetables or fruit. So like I said, rarely will the kiddos' plate look this balanced, but it's a good education tool as well as a good tool for parents to understand what to serve at each meal. So we want at least 3 of these components served at each meal to give them a variety of foods, variety of flavors, variety of textures.
Thing to add on there, Haley, sorry. And I think you're going to get into this a little bit more in a minute too, but something you've said in the past has been like, it's the kid's plate isn't always going to look like this at all. Like it's very common that it's not, and it's okay that it's not, just as long as they're getting their main like food group or their main like energy dependent food groups.
Yep. And I think our big thing that we see a lot is parents are concerned that the kids gravitate more toward that higher carbohydrate food, right? So for example, if you're serving chicken with mashed potatoes and broccoli for dinner, a lot of times they are going to be more excited about the mashed potatoes or, whatever starch or grain is served. And that's okay. Again, that is because carbohydrates are very important and their body is very leans toward that flavor and type of food because they need that energy. Their body appreciates that energy. So a lot of times they won't look this balanced by any means, but that's okay. The most important thing is that they are getting exposed to a variety of different foods in each of these food groups, right? So, and something that we'll talk about or that we've talked about before with snacks. So if you see that your kid is not grabbing as much protein at lunch, or maybe they're not grabbing as much fruit at lunch, then for their afternoon snack, that kind of gives you an idea of what to include for their snack based on what they have grabbed for meals. So you can kind of fill in those nutritional gaps with snacks. So for vegetables, so we recommend the rule of 3, 4, and 5. So you can see down here it says offering 3 servings per week of dark green vegetables, 4 of other vegetables, and then 5 servings of starchy and 5 servings of red and orange. And below it gives you a few examples of what goes into those categories. So dark green vegetables are things like spinach, kale, broccoli. Other vegetables are like zucchini, squash, asparagus, and then red and orange, bell peppers, carrots, tomatoes. And then those starchy vegetables, like I mentioned, would be potatoes, sweet potatoes, peas, beans, and also corn would go here too. So again, with vegetables, we know that kids may not eat them every time they're served. They may not be super excited about them. They may be cautious around vegetables. But again, as the parent, just continue to offer these vegetables, every meal for the most part, right? Fruit or vegetable with every meal. So they get more and more comfortable with the idea of them being there. And then, we'll talk about ways to increase the chance of them having them, right? So including them in the cooking process, maybe it's serving them with a fun dip. So there are ways to make vegetables seem a little bit more exciting. So with fruits, making sure to offer at least 1 vitamin C source daily. So this includes oranges, grapefruits, strawberries, kiwi. And if your kid doesn't eat a lot of fruit or even vegetables, 100% juice is a good way to get vitamin C as well. So if you notice that they're not taking vegetables or fruit as well, this is another option. So usually like 4 to 6 ounces a day of some 100% juice. So the 100% juice is just basically the juice without any added sugar. For grains, the goal here is to have at least 50% of the grains served be whole grains. So this would include your whole grain bread, brown rice, whole wheat cereal, oatmeal, whole wheat pasta, quinoa. Other things would be like bulgur, cornmeal. Those are some like less popular ones to serve. But the point here is whole grains have increased fiber, so more fiber in them. So this is a good way that they do get that fiber. So at least 50%. So that means that there is a place for the white rice or maybe the white pasta. There is a place for that. And it is okay to include that, but trying to also include those whole grains. So some things that we recommend would be to maybe mix white rice with brown rice and see if they are more likely to accept that. Or maybe it's mixing white pasta with wheat pasta, just so they are getting a little bit of fiber from that as well.
There's so many other like whole grain products too, like breads, crackers, cereals, pastas, waffles, muffins. Like there's so much variety in different things too. So even if your child is not ready for whole wheat pasta or brown rice or whatever it is, maybe you could try one of the more common foods that they already eat and find a whole wheat version of it too, to see
Absolutely.
if they adapt to that a little bit better as well.
Yeah, that's such a good idea and a good way to introduce them in a way that they feel comfortable. So one of my favorites is the whole grain Eggo waffles. So if they're used to like the home style or the buttermilk waffle, that's a good way to have to include or introduce some of those whole grains. So with protein, so it says the rule of 2, 2, and 4. So it says provide 2 servings of seafood, 2 of beans and legumes, and 4 of nuts and nut butters. So other options, of course, include your meat, poultry, eggs, dairy. We want to serve this seafood a couple times a week. 1 to 2 servings a week would be awesome. And then the other like plant-based proteins, again, will give them naturally more fiber, of course, variety of different foods and textures, and then also less saturated fats naturally. That's the fat that naturally occurs in meat products. So by serving a variety of these, they get one, they get exposure to many different kinds of protein, but also just getting comfortable with a variety of different things.
I feel like this, I don't know for some if this might seem intimidating or not, but I think it will be a little bit easier said than, or I'm sorry, be a little bit easier than you expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, like during your snack times, you are resorting towards more of the convenient types of things, which are usually going to be your dairy or your plant-based items in general, because they are just so budget friendly and they're so quick to put together. So I think if this is intimidating, I think you will have an easier time with it than you expect.
Absolutely. And even for like quick lunches, right? I mean, a lot of times peanut butter is used for a quick sandwich or peanut butter and crackers. And even like with breakfast, right? Doing like cereal with milk, right? Or again, toast with peanut butter. Those are a good ways to get those other sources of protein. And Meredith had a good point with snacks. Like we're not usually including meat with snacks, right? It's usually those quicker, different variety meats, or sorry, proteins. So this gives you an idea of different vegetarian proteins to include. We recommend what's called a flexitarian diet. So this would be a mix of animal proteins like we were just talking about, and also a mix of some of those vegetarian proteins. So you can see on the left here, so using beans as a protein, so maybe like an at-home Chipotle bowl with like beans, rice, veggies, avocado. Using peas, maybe it's chickpeas, lentils. There are other products out there. One that's I'm thinking of right now is like Banza pasta. So this pasta is made from chickpeas. So what's cool about this product is you get your starch, you get your protein, and then all you have to do is maybe add some sauce and some veggies, and that's a quick, easy meal that includes some vegetarian proteins. Of course, there's things like tofu. There are also protein powders that can be used for like maybe smoothies or something. And then nut butters, and there's some other like the dairy products over here that can be used. And oftentimes dairy is a very easy way to get protein at breakfast or snacks, like we were talking about. So this just gives you an idea of different vegetarian proteins that you can include in maybe one of the meals or snacks. I would say my personal goal would maybe to do one dinner a week that is coming from a plant-based protein, but you can kind of see what works best for your family. So dairy or dairy alternatives. So with this, we recommend offering these daily. We really appreciate the nutrient profile of dairy because there is some protein in there, there is some carbohydrate in there, there's a little bit of fat in there. So it's very balanced food. And also, provides a good amount of energy for the kids and calcium for their bones as they continue to grow and develop. So dairy is a very important food for growing kiddos. Now it doesn't have to, there are several dairy alternatives out there that are pretty comparable to milk now, or to cow's milk now. But just, this is something that is one of those things that can be pretty individualized as far as recommendations go. So talk to your dietitian, talk to your doctor on what the specific recommendations for your kid would be in terms of dairy. So this is something to think about, and we'll talk about the different kinds of meal planners, but what kind of meal planner are you, right? How do you go through the week and plan your meals? How do you grocery shop? Are you one of those that grocery shops every day? You're always picking up something, or maybe you're once a week, every other week. So thinking about what kind of meal planner are you now? So we'll go through some of those. So the most recommended is the weekly planner. So this, we'll kind of talk about what goes into this. So first we start with those evening meals, Monday through Friday. So look at your calendar. What do you have planned, right? Is there a soccer game on Tuesday? Do we have practice, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? So look at what you have planned and then come up with meals around those plans, right? So maybe if it's a busy night on Wednesday, maybe that's a crock pot meal. If it's, a busy night on Thursday, maybe that's a meal that you have leftovers, or maybe it's a quick, easy meal. So come up with meals that work around that schedule. So first look at your schedule and then come up with those meals. So the meals should offer a variety of proteins. Like we talked about earlier, serving different variety of like the beans, the variety of seafood, maybe, a couple times meat, chicken, and then round the meal out by adding color with those fruits and vegetables. And then of course, whatever starch or grain goes with those meals. So typically you'll have some sort of rotation for breakfast and lunch, right? These might be a couple options. It doesn't have to be something different every day, but maybe it's a quick option and then more of like, for breakfast, maybe you have like eggs and toast one morning, and then the other morning you have cereal, milk, and fruit, right? So have kind of something quick, and then maybe if you have a little bit more time, you can make something that's more intensive. So like that's that next bullet point. So include some quick, convenient options. So this goes for dinner as well. So I like to have backup options for those nights that I don't feel like cooking, or maybe the schedule didn't go as planned. So just having something quick and easy to throw together. Also, having room for those convenient meals and quick meals, I think that's what prevents cooking fatigue, right? Because I think if you're always chefing it up in the kitchen with, very complex recipes, then you're going to get tired of doing that. So having a break in between those different recipes that you're cooking for those quick, convenient options keeps things a lot more practical. And then for as far as grocery shopping goes, leave one day for not only shopping, but also to, like we said, for the planning, right? So for me, that would be Sundays. So I look at my schedule for the week. I look at what I have in my fridge already, and then I prepare a list based on some of the things that I need. And then I have some time to go to the grocery store. So this would be, like I said, the most recommended, just to be that weekly planner. So next, this is another popular strategy, would be the freezer planner. So this is more for busy parents. It doesn't have to be, but a lot of busy parents prefer this strategy. So, and this, it can be a mix of both, right? Like you could plan weekly, but also freeze some meals. So things like lasagna, casseroles, quiches, shepherd's pie, those are just a few examples of good freezer meals. And maybe you're preparing 3 to 4 meals each week, so you have them ready. And then the sides would be something that isn't as easily frozen. So you would either buy bags of steamer veggies that are frozen and easily prepared, or maybe they can be prepared fresh because they're a little bit quicker. And then whenever you see the freezer starting to empty, this is a good opportunity to make more. So you're just always having something on hand to be prepared for some of those busy nights.
And with these freezer meals too, it's technically called like batch cooking, where you cook several meals at one time. So if you're making a quiche, maybe you make double or like triple the amount and have it ready, 2 of them ready to just pop in the freezer. So you've only cooked once, and then you have like 3 different quiches you could divide up into your meals as well. So it definitely eliminates the amount of cooking in general that you'll have to do, but especially as you make more at that one setting, eliminate a lot.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. So a few tips with this. So pre-preparation. So chopping vegetables, cooking during the day, so they're already ready to go. Always have staple ingredients. So this is something that's really important. So having things on hand that you could throw together for a quick meal, right? So dry pasta, even like oatmeal, right, for breakfasts. Maybe it's some frozen meals, or some staple items that we keep on hand at my house would be canned beans, canned tomatoes, maybe some frozen steamer veggies to throw things together, rice. Pasta is also one of our staples, and pasta sauce. So those are things that are quick, easy, you know, basically very, very simple meals to make off of things that you typically have. Another tip that's a lot of fun and kids usually like is to have theme nights. So maybe it's Mexican night, maybe it's Italian. One of my favorites is homemade pizza. So this is also a fun time for kids to kind of be a part of that process, making their own pizza, putting new toppings on. And then like Meredith was saying, so double or tripling a meal to freeze some for later for that convenience. And you can freeze almost anything except for a few things. So like canned food, eggs and shells, mayonnaise, fried food, uncooked potatoes, cream sauce, and lettuce. So those are a few things that don't freeze very well, but almost anything other than that can be frozen. And then as far as grocery shopping goes, keeping coupons on hand, right? So just saving a little bit of money there. So let's go through grocery shopping. So I kind of broke it down here into the specific food groups. So for produce, a lot of times we want to pick the fruits and veggies that are in season and then supplement with the frozen and canned. So whenever I'm going through the produce, I look at what I'm cooking that week, of course, and I pick what I need for that. For fruits, I pick a couple fruits that I'll have on hand for the week. And then I'll buy, like I said, some frozen or canned things to keep on hand for some of those quick, easy meals. In terms of taking your kids shopping, this is a fun part to get them involved. So maybe they go and pick the fruits that they want for the week, or they pick the specific veggies out of for your recipe that you need. So getting them involved in picking the fruits and veggies is always a really positive activity for them. So with dairy, again, the fat content recommendation can just depend on what your children need. So consult your dietitian with this one. Protein. So this is something that we get a lot of questions on, but for peace of mind, hormones can't be used in the poultry or hogs, right? So trace amounts can be used in cows to help with meat production. But a lot of times we get questions about this specifically, but this is something, that can be kind of a marketing scam, I guess, in terms of just like labeling products you'll see. With seafood, again, our goal is to serve 1 to 2 times a week. And let's go back to protein for a second. So protein, again, just trying to have a different variety of protein. So whenever you're planning your meals for the week, trying to serve a different variety of each kind throughout the week. And then breads and grains. So we'll talk about grains a little bit more on the next slide. And then fats and oils. So we want to reserve most of our fats from plant fats. Right? So that looks like avocados, nuts, seeds, different kind of oils. And then also another good heart healthy fat comes from fatty fish. So like tuna and salmon. So those are the fats that we want to include most of the time. So those would be more of like the always foods. But then of course we sometimes, we'll serve butter or, other fats that, would included as like the sometimes foods. So this is a chart that comes from the book that talks a little bit more about grains. So it gives you a little bit of some helpful tips on different products. So cereals. So what we're looking for here is that whole grain is the first ingredient. So that goes for bread too. So whenever we're trying to buy a grain that is whole grain, that should be the first ingredient. With cereal, we're looking for around at least 3 grams of fiber, and so less than about 10 grams of sugar. So if it's lower than that, awesome, but it is very difficult to do that for cereal. But if it has the 10 grams of sugar and 3 grams of fiber, that's a good choice. Something with cereal that we recommend a lot is maybe it's serving the whole grain option, but then also including some of their fun cereal in there, so they're more likely to accept that option. So that's a fun way to still keep them excited, but also make sure that they're not getting a ton of added sugar at once. With bread, same thing. So whole grain is the first ingredient, at least 2 grams of fiber or more per slice, less than 3 grams of sugar, and less than 150 milligrams of sodium. So those are things that we're looking for there. The other thing on the right, it says, so what a couple things to look for is the 100% stamp. So this indicates that all of the grains are whole, and they contain at least 16 grams of whole grains per serving. A couple other ones that we'll go over. So watching out for multigrain. So this doesn't necessarily mean whole grain. It just means that there are some whole grains in there. And same thing with made with whole grains. So this can have as actually as little as 10% of a whole grain per serving. So those are things kind of to look out for. But again, just looking for that 100% stamp or whole grain as the first ingredient. So this is another chart from the book. So these are a few things to keep on hand. So like we were talking about earlier, just those staple foods that make cooking a lot easier, more practical and easier to throw things together. So things to buy in bulk, canned and jarred items. So like I said, keeping canned tomatoes, tomato sauce, maybe it's beans. I usually keep some broths on hand in order to make some soups or whatever recipe it's calling for. Tuna, so canned tuna or chicken, that's another thing that's easily kept on hand. Different grains and beans, so maybe it's couscous, maybe it's a brown rice, quinoa, dried pasta, cereal, oats. These are all things that are easily kept on hand. Frozen foods, so like frozen meats and frozen veggies. Condiments, oils, spices, so keeping certain spices on hand, and condiments is good for kids too, just because again, like we talked about, sometimes they are more likely to try things if they're able to dip their food into them. And then baking goods, so keeping flour on hand, sugar on hand, maybe it's more like baking soda, stuff like that. So keeping this on hand is always very helpful. Okay, so that concludes our lesson today. Next week, we will be going over nutrition for teenagers. So this is between the ages of about 13 to 18 years old. Again, as always, if you have any questions or concerns about this specific topic, or maybe it's a different topic that you're interested in, please give us that feedback. We're always looking to hear from you guys, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.